So, I'm glad that you all got here tonight. It's good to see you. We have classical economics tonight with Mike Weinert, who will be right back. But before he introduces us to classical economics, which he calls the best for understanding our economy. Mike is an economist, and he will be telling us something about Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Karl Marx, and their relevance for today. So, okay.
Let's get our speaker on.
Mr. Weinert.
Oh,
Thank you. Mike Weinert. You're here.
You're not leaving, are you? My fellow
Thank you, Brown, for that rousing introduction. I haven't been called Mr. in I don't know how long.
Well, what should I call you, Dr. Professor?
Just don't call me late for dinner. And, you know, I have to admit, I thought I was very familiar with Chicago and its streets, but Mashington Street, Charles, you'll have to know. You'll have to let us know where Mashington Street is. You know, we're not too up on your knowledge of the Chicago loop.
They all are.
Thanks for coming, everybody. It's good to see so many people interested in economics, or at least feigning interest. Okay, my education and my trade, economics. Why did I go into economics? I mean, I'd like someone to tell me, because, you know, why the hell did I go into economics?
Study of why you. Why the hell?
Okay, it's because I wanted to learn how society works. And actually my first choice to pursue that was political science. And I said, no, I think economics is going to tell you how society works, you know, more. What is that movie where they say, follow the money?
All the President's
All the President's Men, yeah. Follow the money. Deep Throat tells them that, right? Okay, so first, just to set the foundation, what is economics? Okay, economics is a blank. You know, just the overall classification of economics. Who can fill that in? Economics is a blank.
Study of social science.
A social, very good. Who said that? All right. Your studies were not in vain, Gene. It's a social science. Okay, what does that mean? That means it deals with how people relate to each other in a society. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're relating to each other as equals, or that everyone who relates to each other is free. In the slave society, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, masters and slaves, slave sellers and slaves, they related to each other. A social interaction, but obviously one is at a higher level, power-wise, than the other person. So economics is the social science that deals with the social production of goods and services, basically. In a capitalist society, it also deals with the allocation of the proceeds of those activities. In other words, the profits, the revenues. The field of economics used to be called political economy. So the writers I'm going to talk about in their ideas, they were referred to as political economists. They were also referred to as social philosophers. That was the field then. But political economy, now that's an interesting term, because when you think about it, they were realizing that the political structure and the economic structure were intertwined. That the political structure reinforced, protected, and promoted the economic structure, and the the powerful people, the people that really benefited from the economic structure. Now you go to college and you have to pick economics or politics, and it's really an artificial distinction. The two are so intertwined that they had a better idea in the old days. Call it political economy and study those things and deal with those things together. So much for progress.
What's your academic and work background?
Okay, you can ask that in the Q&A. Yeah, I've got my thing down to the 60 minutes, so feel free to ask that in the question and answer thing, please. Thank you. What is classical economics? When we say classical economics, well, to me it's the economics that focuses on the basic principles, the basic laws of economics. For example, it looks at the source of value. What determines the value of a commodity, of a service, or a good? What determines why one commodity is more valuable, carries a higher price on average than another commodity, good or service? What is the reason for developments? Okay, you see numbers, you see things being put out there. Oh, middle income people are down in number as a whole. Okay, we can understand that, but what is behind that? It's getting at what's behind the numbers. The reason for developments, the impact of the numbers, getting a handle on exactly what's going on here. You know, it's basically how things work in an economy, and never losing sight that economics is a social science. It's how people interact with other people. And to a person, the political economists, the classical economists, were cognizant of how society as a whole should be served. You hear the term the biggest bang for the buck. They knew there would be poverty, but they wanted the lion's share of the citizenry to thrive, and that was the focus of Adam Smith. That was the focus of David Ricardo, Malthus too. I'm not going to get into him so much, and of course it was the focus of Marx. To understand what something is it sometimes helps to define what it is not. So what classical economics is not? It is not neoliberal economics. Now, when I went to school, they weren't using the term neoliberal so much. They were using the term neoclassical, especially for economics. Neoclassical economics. Now it's neoliberal economics. What is that? Well, it's a focus on serving capital. Okay, when I took my degree at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in economics, the focus was on, that's good apple juice. The focus was on, as an economist, serving capital, serving the free market system, doing what it took. And what did that mean? Okay, it was getting into mathematical economics. It was getting into, well, they called it econometrics back then. Now they call it mathematical economics. Forecasting, giving capital, giving the people that manipulate capital tools that they can maximize the return of capital. And they said that is the role of an economist. If you're not going to serve capital, you don't have the right to call yourself an economist. That was drilled into us when I went to college. All right? That is neoclassical economics, and that is neoliberal economics. The focus is on correlations, curves. Okay, this supply and demand curve, we all know about that. Modeling to help allocators of capital to do that. So making predictions, helping them make predictions.
Thank you.
But there's a lack of foundation in neoliberal economics, as there was in what they call neoclassical economics. And we saw that, when did we see that? Did we see that perhaps around the year 2008? Okay. We have the finest economists that neoliberalism can produce. We see Ben Bernanke and the person who created him, Alan Greenspan, and now Janet Yellen, who's now in the role of the head of the Federal Reserve Board. And how did they serve society in their role in the housing bubble and in their role of the aftermath of the bubble? Okay. They were reduced to serving as cheerleaders. Let's keep this thing going, okay? 1927 to 1929, yeah, we can do it better. We can do it better than they did. Did they do it better? No, you can't do it better. Greenspan's role was primarily in the effect of the crash. And I remember seeing, and I think it was his, when he was retiring, and he gave a press conference, and he was asked, what is your position on derivatives? And he says, I have no problem whatsoever with derivatives. Okay? Alan Greenspan, you know, the titan of neoliberal economics. And we all know, and you know, those of you that don't understand what a mortgage-backed security is, it's a derivative. And Alan Greenspan, he had a terrific reputation. You know, his reputation is in the toilet, you know, for that one thing. Or if it isn't, it should be. Okay. Now, where you see the failure of neoliberal economics or neoclassical economics is in their focus on these correlations. Okay, they say, oh, in the past, when this happened, this other thing happened. So that must be a law. If this goes up, this other thing must go down just because it's happened before, and so that's going to happen again. All right? Anyone know about the Phillips curve? Okay. The Phillips curve says that when unemployment is high, that there's a corresponding growth in expansion of the growth of the gross domestic product. Okay, where did we see this correlation not happen? Remember a word called stagflation?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the word we had. It was during the Reagan administration.
I thought it was the 70s in Carter.
What happened? What?
I thought it was during the 70s in Carter,
It
stagflation.
continues.
Stagflation? Really?
Never mind.
Well,
Go
let's-
ahead.
Carter.
I'm sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Or-
Yeah, stop interrupting.
Okay, and I think I misspoke. I meant to say inflation and GDP.
Ah.
I think I said unemployment. Okay, so you're go by. Thank you. Okay, the Phillips curve had to do, with inflation. The rise in inflation of consumer prices and the rise in GDP. Those two things. I think I said unemployment, and that was wrong. Okay. You saw that in the Reagan administration, yeah. Stagflation, where inflation was going through the roof, but GDP was
Right.
was going down even. I mean, not only the rate of growth in GDP was going down, but actual GDP was going down. So, okay, the Phillips curve is out the window. Does anyone remember the term the Laffer curve?
Yes.
And it was a laugher. And you can ask me. Oh, you remember. Okay, you're raising
Yeah, I
your
know
hand.
what it
Okay.
is. I know
thank
it
you.
was.
All right. Okay, who developed the Laffer curve? And this is a Laffer. Yeah, go ahead.
Arthur Laffer.
No.
It
The
wasn't?
Laffer curve was inspired by Arthur Laffer. It was developed by two guys in the Ford administration.
Oh.
Okay? One of their names was Cheney.
Dick Cheney?
The Dickster himself. Okay? And the other one was a guy named Donald Rumsfeld, who maybe carries a little more panache. as far as his name is concerned. But they cleared it with Arthur. They said, we've developed this curve, and if you're okay with it, Mr. Laffer, can we call it the Laffer curve? And he says, yeah, it goes along. Okay, the Laffer curve, what that said was that when the income tax rate is lowered, actual federal tax revenues will increase. Okay, you say, how can that happen? Well, that's partly predicated on the fact that they say business activity is encouraged. If the income tax rate is lower, the business expansion will be spurred. And part of that was the savings rate. Okay, people's income tax is lower. They have more that they could put into savings, so there's more capital available for business expansion. Okay, this was developed in the Ford administration. Wasn't tested so much in the Carter administration, but it was in the Reagan administration, which was the succeeding Republican administration. Those correlations failed to happen. So the Laffer curve was thrown out, but that's to tell you how bankrupt, pun intended, neoclassical, neoliberal economics is. When I say neoliberal economics, I'm talking about mainstream. This is today's mainstream economics. All right. So when you read magazines like The Economist, if you want to be considered as an economic superstar, if you want to sell a whole bunch of books, you're going to be a mainstream economist, you're going to be a neoliberal economist. All right. What neoliberal economics fails to realize, fails to consider, economics is a social science, okay? We human beings, we're not robots. Just because society reacted in a certain way the first time a given set of circumstances presented themselves, that doesn't mean that we're going to react the same way the second time. But neoclassical, neoliberal economics assumes that if we reacted a certain way one time, we're just going to keep on reacting the same way ad infinitum. And because it's all into the numbers. It forgets that it's a social science. We're human beings, we're not robots. Neoliberal economics doesn't even pretend to be interested in society as a whole any longer. What proof do we have of that? The most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data showing the average wage internationally. Okay, what place were American workers in internationally as far as the average wage level of non-supervisory workers? Do you think we were in the top 10?
No.
Not even. 16th place. Okay? And then the next year we were in 15th place, but that's because they removed Belgium, because Belgium had stopped reporting comparable data. Okay? 16th place. The average wage of non-supervisory American workers, there's 15 countries where it is higher than America. America, the richest country in the world. Okay? Don't get me started. All right? Adam Smith. So we have Adam Smith, the godfather of classical economics. Born in 1723, died 1790. Okay, I'm going to take a vote here. Show your hands. Smith and the role of government. Raise your hand if you think that Adam Smith said that the government should absolutely abstain from any role whatsoever in the marketplace, in the economic system. Okay. How many think that he said nothing about this?
Nothing.
Yeah. How many think that he said the government should play a role, depending on the situation, in the marketplace, in the economic system? Okay, we'll get into that. Another vote, and everyone, this is a whole other question. How many people think that most Republicans said that Adam Smith said that the government should play no role in the economy. All right.
Well,
Okay, his work, the thing of interest is his work called The Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, right? Okay. And what year was that published in?
1776.
Very good. 70, very important year. Despite the title, that book is as much prescription as description. He's describing how things are going, but he's providing his prescriptions. He's telling whoever's interested. He's telling government officials. He's telling people in the business community. He's telling academics what he thinks should go on. So what was his milieu, economically speaking? Okay, we had full-fledged mercantilism. Mercantilism means international trade on a full-fledged level. This is people. This is the bourgeoisie getting together, actually, forming stock companies. The bourgeoisie, remember, at this time was the middle class. The landowning class, the nobility, was the upper class. The bourgeoisie still, there wasn't anyone like Donald Trump that had so much money that they could really do very much with. So to form these companies like the East India's company, they had to get together. They had to pool their capital. And so this burgeoning middle class, they did that in the arena of international trade. So that was going full bore. In capitalist production, industrial production, okay, the Industrial Revolution had just gotten started. Some people, they say that 1760 was the start of the Industrial Revolution. Whatever, it was going on. And Adam Smith, he talks about the work processes, how they were developing. He talks about the production of pins, like hat pins. And there were 5 different work processes involved in the production of hat pins, ladies' hat pins. All right? And it used to be that one person did all those processes. But he says he went into this place and he saw that they had boiled down each process into a separate thing performed by a separate worker. So the person that put the head on the pin was not the person that sharpened the point, and so forth and so on. And this is the start of basically what Frederick Winslow Taylor implemented is these work processes, and Marx referred to that as alienation. He didn't especially like to see that, but that was reality. Smith didn't say yay or nay about it. He said this is what's happening. To him he basically said yay about it because it increased the productive capacity of the nation. It improved, it contributed to the wealth of the nation. Okay. Now, Smith had a lot of idealism. His idealism was inspired by the social contract. The social contract was from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a French thinker. And of interest in the social contract from Rousseau is this vignette. And in this vignette from Rousseau, this guy moves to another town, a new town. And he's walking around, and he bumps into this guy. And he says, "Excuse me, I'm looking for the Lafarge Metalworks." And he says, "Oh, I'm Mr. Lafarge. What is your business with the Lafarge Metalworks?" And he says, "I just moved to town, and I would like to apply for employment there." And Mr. Lafarge says, "Well, I'm going there. You can walk with me, but what do you do?" And he says, "I'm a metalsmith." "Oh, do you have experience?" "Yeah, I have experience. I can do anything you need." "Oh, what would you need for a wage?" And he says, "Oh, I think like 40 francs a week I can pay you. We start our people at 40 francs a week." And the hopeful future employee says, "Oh no, I would need 80. I mean, I'm an experienced person. I have a family to feed." And they go back and forth, and they decide on 60 francs a week for the guy. And Rousseau says, this is the most beautiful thing that you can ever imagine. These two guys, they bump into each other, and in total freedom, they negotiate something that suits them both. Is this, this is just, this is better than sex, basically is what he's saying. All right? So it's the invisible hand is Adam Smith's term for that concept. And that is where people's self-interests are getting together. They're being tempered by their somewhat conflicting interests, but in essence they're combining to create something which is to the common good. Both sides are happy. And of course this is predicated on honest and honorable competition, which doesn't necessarily always apply. Now Smith, he was focused on economic equilibrium or harmony. He says that there's nothing to prevent, if things are going along properly and if things are properly regulated, and I'll get into that we can't have equilibrium. And that's essential to the proper functioning of a capitalist society. Harmony. Now to Smith and to Ricardo and Marx, this was progress. Capitalism replaced feudalism. Feudalism, semi-servitude, semi-bondage. This was infinitely more free, more progressive, more democratic. Smith saw capitalists, the better one, the altruistic capitalists, as being progressive-minded. They were democratically inclined. They were champions of freedom. So Smith was a cheerleader for capitalism. Now he's been painted as naive by people like Heilbronner, but I'll get to that when I talk about Ricardo. Now the role of government to Smith, he said the government absolutely had a role to go in, and when a monopolistic situation had developed, to break that up. He said it was absolutely essential to maintain competition. Now, Smith thought that competition was compromised, or monopolies came about because something had gone wrong. One of the competitors in a market was bribing the authorities or sabotaging the competition, something like that. So the government needed, there's something wasn't kosher. The government, he said, absolutely needed to go in to maintain a competitive environment. Infrastructure and other social services, roads, bridges. Smith had no problem with government providing education and health services. There was a debate then between people and Smith's inclination about the role of government. How big should the role of government be? And people were saying the government should play the smallest role possible. But Smith said, no, if the government takes on certain activities, it's not a loss to the productive capacity. It's not a loss to the wealth of the nation, as long as it can be done properly. And he thought that government, there's no reason that government should not take on certain things, such as the road building, the bridge building. Of course, there were privately run turnpikes and so forth, but no, Smith had no problem with that. Now, this is very interesting. Smith additionally said that the protection of the state can properly go towards establishing and supporting infant industrial monopolies. All right. Now, what could this be? Okay. Steel mills, perhaps? You think about NASA. Yeah. How could our space exploration program exist without the role of a strong central government? All right, but in his milieu, what he's talking about is the industrial capitalists. They're loath to get together. They're loath to pool their capital. The mercantilists had no problem with it, but the industrial capitalists, no, they didn't want to go in stock companies, publicly traded companies. They didn't want to issue stock. They didn't want to get into that. But how otherwise could you, for example, have a steel mill? You know, how could you produce steel other than swords and dinnerware, such as like to have a Titanic, you know, the ship, the Titanic, and ocean-going vegetable vessels. I'm turning into a vegetable. Okay. Of relevance today also with Smith, labor is the source of value. And he did not qualify that. Labor is the source of value, economic value. He also said that in a country, a commodity should be produced that it makes sense to produce there. A country should produce something that it makes sense. So, for example, in America, growing cotton, textile mills, clothing manufacturers, he would say it makes sense for America to produce clothing, to produce iron and steel products. We have the iron ore resources. We have as good capacity as anyone to produce steel. Do it. Okay, but what do we have these days? Okay, this shirt was produced by Hathaway in the United States. I worked for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Through the 1980s, we still had an industry wage survey of the manufacture of ready-to-wear men's and boys' shirts in America. There were tens of thousands of people engaged in America through the early 80s in the manufacture of ready-to-wear men's and boys' shirts. How many Americans today are engaged in the United States in the manufacture of ready-to-wear men's and boys' shirts?
None.
Zero. Zero. Okay. This shirt was from Hathaway. That last plant that they had closed like 10 years ago. I think it was in Texas. Zero. Now, how does it make sense to dismantle the capacity to produce men's and boys' shirts and reassemble that capacity overseas?
Because the cost of shipping has come down so much that they can now they can save so much money on the cost of labor by having the stuff made in, let's say, Bangladesh, that it actually is worth it to do it over there instead of doing it here.
Okay, Tim, you have to add that to my
Okay.
my time. Okay, what do we have? Okay, there's a figure. There's a figure that has to do with that. It's a two-word figure. Trade gap. We know what the trade gap is? The trade gap compares the value of exports from a country to the value of imports into a country. Now, for quite a while now, the value of exports from America has fallen significantly below the value of what is imported into America. Okay? That should be a problem, and it goes to the heart of the wealth of nations. All right. Well, what do the neoclassical economists say about that? They say there's no problem. They said that's actually a symbol of strength. That we can purchase these cheaper goods. What's the matter with being a consumer economy? Okay. There's another number that came out 2 months ago, okay. And it has to do with middle-income Americans. Okay, 2 months ago it was reported that for the first time since the number was tracked, middle-income Americans now no longer comprise the majority of Americans. The majority of Americans are no longer middle income. The majority of us are now low income. This is part and parcel with this dismantling of our productive capacity. And it's not only men's and boys' shirts, it's towels and bed linens, and it's electronics. Do you remember when America was the center of electronic televisions, hi-fis, radios? How much of that is produced in America anymore? Yeah. again 0. But that goes, that dismantling of productive capacity goes in hand with the loss, with Americans becoming proportionally lower income. And Smith would not be happy with, if he were an American anyway. He was a Scotsman, actually, but he was concerned with the United Kingdom. But if he were an American now, he would, with what he thought at the time, he would not be happy. Okay, the size of government, like I said, it's not an issue, but obviously Smith did have a problem with some aspects of government. He warned against the idea of government meddling with the economy. He said basically, if things are going fine, just stay out of the economy and to the government. And so then we have David Ricardo, the next titan of political economy, born 1772, died 1823. Okay, I'm going to take another vote. Among Smith, Ricardo, and Marx, who said the continuation of capitalism will lead to the increasing impoverishment and misery of working people? And you can vote for more than one, because more than one may have said this. Who thinks that Smith said that? Who thinks that Ricardo said that?
What was the question again?
Among the three economists that I'm talking about today, who, and you can vote for more than one, said that the continuation of capitalism will lead to the increasing impoverishment and misery of us working people? So no one raised their hand for Smith, but so who thinks that Ricardo said that? Who thinks that Marx said that? Okay, all right, you know that. Okay. Now, David Ricardo's book, I'll get to that, was on the principles of political economy and taxation, published in 1817. Compared to Smith, you have a book which is heavier in realism than with Smith. It doesn't have these highfalutin ideas. Now, Robert Halberner, who was mostly a philosopher, he said that it was with David Ricardo that economics became a true science. I don't know, I think Halberner is short-selling his Smith. I think Smith was scientific enough. Ricardo, less optimistic than Smith, and on some level downright pessimistic. Although he did have some idealism with a different focus than Smith's. And like Smith, he provided prescriptions in addition to describing. What was Ricardo's milieu? The growth of government was happening. This required a variety of taxes that didn't exist during Smith's time. The economy was getting a lot messier than Smith had envisioned or hoped for. The competition was not quite as pure as what Smith would have liked. There was nowhere near as much harmony between the classes as Smith envisioned. The Industrial Revolution at the point that Ricardo hits the scene was going great guns. There were steam engines. They weren't too much. 1 horsepower steam engines that were involved in production and transportation. And they were much more prevalent than existed in Smith's time. What were Ricardo's contributions? Well, primarily in taxation. It was how taxes and the changes in tax rates affect specific sectors of the economy or specific industries. The idea of fine-tuning tax rates in each industry or economic sector to tweak the economy to achieve optimality were a major contribution that Ricardo advanced. And it was to achieve the best result for the society or the nation. Now, he advocated tariffs. He was a protectionist, at least on a specialized basis. This is something neoliberalism has abandoned, but his idea, he called it national comparative advantage. And he wanted for the government to serve all of society, including its working people, as much as possible. So he advocated protectionist tariffs. he advanced the idea of the labor theory of value as part of his value theory, which he really played it out, and it was pretty scientific. This influenced Marx to a great degree, except that Ricardo fell away from Smith. Ricardo said that labor was only one component of the value of commodities. He said that capital also played a role in determining value and determining relative value. Other ideas? Okay, he did say that the continuation of capitalism would indeed increase poverty and misery for working people. Now, why did he say this? He said that, well, at first, it's going to help working people. But then, because it's going to help working people, you're going to have a marked decrease in the infant mortality rate. You're going to have, all these people that would have died before reaching adulthood amongst the working people, and the labor market is going to be flooded with people, and the capitalists are going to bargain down the wage rates below the level of the cost of living. But he says, yeah, but what are you going to do about it? Basically, he didn't have a prescription for that. Labor was also affected, was also involved with the constant capital. Raw materials purchased, the rent value, facilities. Now rent, a capitalist could rent, and most of them did rent their facilities. Some of them owned the facilities. That was becoming more prominent, so there was rent value. And that's really the first time we see opportunity cost, because with rent value, equivalent cost, what they're giving up by manufacturing a product in a facility versus what they could get by renting out the facility. Okay, that's called rental equivalent, and that's the first time we see an example of opportunity cost in economics. They talk about that all the time these days. Business cycles. Okay, we see a business cycle analysis starting with Ricardo. Now, market saturation, no, he didn't see that as a reason for downturns. He saw if there was an interruption in selling goods overseas. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't matter if more furnaces are built in England than what England can absorb, because you can sell them overseas. So what's the problem with that? You can always find some idiot somewhere in the world to buy stuff. So as far as like market saturation, he said it didn't exist, because the world is just full of people. Expand the markets. There was something that came out of Ricardo and his pessimism. Ricardian socialists. Okay? There are some people that refer to themselves as Ricardian socialists. Okay. Next we go to Karl Marx, born 1818, died 1883. Okay. I'm going to take another vote. How many people think that Marx said that capitalism was bad? It was a bad thing. Okay. How many people think that Karl Marx says capitalism was a good thing? How many people think he really didn't say either thing?
Yeah, a little bit more stuff.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I can answer that right away. Marx said that capitalism was a progressive force. He said to keep it around after it's lost its value, after it no longer serves society, is not a good thing. But he never said that capitalism was bad or good. He did say it was a progressive thing and it needed to happen, and it expanded freedom, It expanded democracy. So I guess in that way you could say he said it actually was a good thing. For as long as it was a progressive force in society. I'm going to skip this. So what was Marx's milieu? Excuse me, I took French, so I have to pronounce that word properly. They called his economic milieu the second stage of the Industrial Revolution, or the second Industrial Revolution. The work was becoming even more segmented, and Marx refers to this as worker alienation. And he gets sentimental. He actually decries the state where someone is just doing a repetitive thing every day. Instead of building a horse carriage, they're only grinding out cotter pins to affix the wheel onto the axle. Or they're just polishing the woodwork or something like that. And it's almost like he's waxing nostalgic for the past, because he sees, he thinks that this is bringing about a deterioration in the quality of the work life of working people. Okay, there's even more machinery, of course, being used in production, and the developments in machinery are probably something that neither Ricardo nor Smith had imagined. At this time, many thought the limit had been reached with automation, and it seems that Marx thought so too. It seems that he was hoping that that was the case, because he just, over and over again, he talks about the good old days when a worker made a whole product instead of just a tiny fraction of a product. And this is still before the assembly line, okay? So, how do you say oy vey in Yiddish, right? So, and what you had increasingly was poor worker health and safety because of these changes. Women and child labor, much expanded. Part of that is because the fatality rate among the men was high in the way the work processes were coming. And you have great expansion in class warfare. 1848 saw attempts at communist revolutions in a lot of Europe, Germany and France, for example, which Marx was behind. His Communist Manifesto had come out earlier in that year. What were Marx's contributions? He showed what went wrong with capitalism. He absolutely shreds the social contract. He says this idea that a guy bumps into his future employer and it's all beautiful, he totally shreds that as naive nonsense, and like, how could a thinking person buy into that concept? But he doesn't provide any prescriptions, meaning he doesn't provide an RX so that capitalism can be repaired. He's not interested in the repair, in the proper functioning of capitalism. Unless you could say that his prescription for capitalism is euthanasia. Okay? Yeah, thank you. And he refines and he corrects Ricardo. Marx loved to correct people. The theory of value he puts back to Smith's basis. Yeah, labor is the only source of value, and he says Ricardo was wrong for saying that capital was a component in value or relative value. Worker exploitation. Okay, he's saying that what's the difference? Why is there revenue? Why is there profit that doesn't go to the employee? They're producing a certain amount of value, but their recompense is only a fraction. Well, it's just a portion of that value. I shouldn't say only a fraction. Now, he says capitalism was good, but now it has to go. It's no longer serving society. Yeah. The abuses are well documented in capital. The government had these commissions to do these studies into worker fatality, into the incidence of child labor, of children working 40 plus hours a week but not going to school at all. Women having to work to support the family too, rather than staying home with their children. He agreed with Ricardo on the causes of business cycles, though too. So he was not what you would call the field of business cycle analysis. Still hadn't come about. Marx didn't make any improvements on what Ricardo has said. He says, if inventory is building up, it's because the capitalist just needs to go overseas and expand the markets and sell these products overseas. The worker, he said about Ricardo's thing about workers, the idea that workers, with this flooding of the labor market, are going to take wage levels that are lower than the cost of living. Marx said, no, that's not going to happen. He said the price of labor is equal to the cost of living. Now, what was Marx's? Who did he deal with in the International Working Men's Association? The first international, what they call. The working people there were the skilled craft or tradespeople. So these were the prince of the trades. These are the people that they're not going to take wage levels below what they need to live on. So Marx may have been kind of naive on that. The real reason, he said, for things getting worse for working people as capitalism advances is the declining rate of profit that would just cause industries to downscale and shut down. I mean, they might ask people to work at wages that are lower than the cost of living, but he said, no, that's not going to happen. Because who's going to work at a wage rate that you can't support yourself and your family? That was Marx. Okay, so why, as capitalism progresses, is the average rate of profit going to keep declining? It's automation. More and more automation, and he says it happens. Capitalism has the need to implement this automation, but he says by doing so, capitalism is shooting itself in its own foot. Okay, and so a new type of machinery, improved machinery, comes around, and maybe the first manufacturing plant to get that stuff, they're going to enjoy a temporary increase in their profit rate, but their competitors are going to put that stuff into place. But what is the source of profit in capitalism, according to Marx? The source of profit in capitalism, per Marx, is paying the working person at a rate that is lower than the amount of economic value that they have produced. Right? With machinery, okay, you can't cheat a machine. Marx said that when you automate, when you have this new, more efficient piece of machinery, that it is transmitting embodied labor that is embodied within it by the people that built that machine, by the people that work for the machinery manufacturer. But that is not a source of profit, because you can't cheat a machine. You can cheat a human being. By when a human being produces in England 10 pounds worth of value in the course of a week, and you pay him 5 pounds in his wages. That's the source of profit. But with increasing automation, that input into the production process is a declining proportion of input. And so he agreed with Ricardo that as capitalism progresses, or continues, the misery for working people will increase, but he disagrees with the reason for that. Except instead of, like Ricardo saying, what are you going to do about it? Marx says, there is something we can do about it. We can have a revolution, and we can have a new economic system to bring that stuff, put that stuff into the, what they call the ash bin of history. Who said that? Trotsky? I don't know. All right. Conclusions and summary, okay? Another vote. Oh, no, I'm going to skip that. I think, how much time do I have left there, Timmy?
Right now it's 7:18. We'll go to 7:30.
Okay, thank you. Looking at their impacts as economist, Smith, I think his impact was largely philosophical or idealistic. There are still a lot of people, a lot of Republicans that they may be on the wrong track, but they this idealism that they see in Smith, and he was idealistic. The trust busting that we saw, and in some ways continue to see as part of that idealism. Well, we saw that in the progressive administrations of Teddy Roosevelt, for example. I can't but imagine that a lot of the people that were involved in trust busting during the administration of the first Roosevelt were inspired by Adam Smith. Now Ricardo, less known, but arguably may have had the biggest impact, at least to date. Sectoral tax analysis and policy. I mean, that still exists. That's the U.S. government believes in that and practices sectoral tax analysis. That started with Ricardo. That's nothing that Marx wanted to get into, obviously, because he had different foci. The nationalistic thing, promoting economic dominance as much as possible through protective tariffs. Like I say, it's been actually lessened by the neoliberals. America has used that in a punitive sense, such as when Japan has improperly subsidized its steel industry and is selling underpriced, quote-unquote, steel in America, and the United States has imposed a punitive tariff. It's not a protective tariff, but it's a punitive tariff to equalize things. And that's another thing. Why in America, with our iron ore reserves and our steel mills, why should we be importing raw steel? It goes against the whole idea of the wealth of the nations and the working people, us working people. I shouldn't gesture there with my apple juice in hand. Shut up. And now, with Marx, it's really harder to say what his impact has been. He did have a pretty quick impact in capital. Like I say, it's rife with examples from these statistical studies of abuses of injury rate, fatality rate in employment, and the exploitation of women and child labor. And there was a reform movement that sprung up that actually, the result of that was reforms to tackle some of those issues. So he did have an immediate impact. I mean, he wanted a revolution, but like FDR ended up doing, it was reforming capitalism rather than doing away with it. Classical economics, like I say, has been dwarfed by neoliberal economics, this mainstream economics. And you have some people, even some people that seem to have very cogent and on-target analyses. There's a writer called Chris Hedges. And when you listen to him, it's like he has a spot-on analysis of what's wrong with capitalism. And you can picture a neoliberal listening to him and saying, uh-oh, I don't like where this is going. But what is Chris Hedges? I don't know. Raise your hand if you've heard or are familiar with Chris Hedges' work. Okay. What is his prescription? What is his RX?
Well, I believe Chris Hedges is a Marxist, isn't he?
He talks like a Marxist, though, when he's describing what's wrong. But his prescription is to resuscitate FDR. It's to I'm not kidding. It's to go back to FDR. It's to find, see if there's any FDR DNA. And I'm exaggerating, but no, it's going. He wants to revive the FDR administration. That's his prescription.
No.
And like I say, no, You think the way he criticizes capitalism that yeah, he's going to be a Marxist in his
I thought he
prescription,
was.
but no. So when the neoliberals hear the ending of what he's saying, they go, "Ooh, hey, he's okay." Dean Baker, anyone familiar with Dean Baker? He talks about some of the financial things, and he's very critical of the Fed's role in the bubble and the bursting of the bubble and how that played out. And he's a very good business cycle analyst, and a lot of people think that he invented business cycle analysis, and he doesn't seem eager to dissuade people about that. But no, he's not a revolutionary. There are Marxist economists. Okay. There's no neo-Marxists, you know. I know when I went to school we had neoclassical economics. I don't know what does that mean. To me, it had nothing to do with classical economics. It should have been called post-classical economics. Okay. Neoliberalism, they use the term in England, I mean in Europe, they just call it liberalism. You know, what is neoliberalism? Is that new and improved liberalism? Is that cuddly? Okay. It's like neo-Nazis. You know? What is a neo-Nazi? A new and improved Nazi? You know? Someone that we can talk to, we can have a beer with? You know, what is this? Like in Hogan's Heroes, you know, you had the lovable, funny, cuddly Nazis. I didn't understand that. 20 years after the end of World War II, you got these funny, lovable Nazis in the sitcom. A neo-fascist. Is that a new and improved fascist? What's the difference between a neo-fascist and a fascist?
A new version, not necessarily improved.
No, it's no. Yeah.
But you don't get it. I've never heard the term neo-Marxist anyway. I don't know what that means. But Marxist economists, to call yourself a Marxist economist these days, and I used to call myself a Marxist, and I guess you could say to some extent I use Marxian analysis. But a Marxian economist is kind of hogtied. You know, you have to serve the master. And Marx was not the end-all and be-all of economics. He made great contributions. He was, like I say, one of the three titans of political economy. But when you have to pay homage to the master like that, I mean, you're not going to call yourself a Marxist unless you're going to do that. To me, it constricts, probably more accurately, what your analysis, what you're going to say. All right. So final exam. Okay. As of what do I have here? Okay. Yeah, 2014, the most recent numbers. As of 2014, what was the percentage of GDP in America produced by labor? Okay. Was it? I'm going to give you 4 choices. Okay. Approximately 25%. How many people think that in the year 2014, approximately 25% of GDP was produced by labor?
What's the whole range? What's the whole range?
Okay, I'm going to give you a 25%, 50%, 77.18%, and 100%. Okay. So raise your hand if you think it was 25%. 50%. 77.18%. 100%. Are you the only one? That's right? Is he the only one that raises his hand on 100%?
Yeah.
He's right? All economic value is produced by labor.
Oh.
So all economic GDP. Okay, what is GDP? GDP is the sum total of economic value produced in a nation in a year's time. So
okay.
stand up. Stand up, Ron. The only one paying attention. Well, take a bow from your seat then. Well, thank you very much for coming. I sure appreciate your interest. And I sure appreciate that so many people are interested in economics. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I stay here for Q's and or A's.
I don't want to clap.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Couple tunnels.
He has to call.
Let's
He's
see,
the-
I see
Sorry.
David Zucker.
All right, my question to you is this. About a week ago, the American Experience ran an excellent program on the mine wars in West Virginia. And my question is, what would Adam Smith have made of the treatment of miners by the mine owners?
Well, it's hard to say. He was for progress. In his day, the treatment of workers was improving, and he was for that. So it wasn't a static thing. They talk about working people going from eating black or barley bread in the United Kingdom to eating whole wheat bread and having tea instead of thick black coffee, and you know, that's kind of a trivialized way to put things, but things were improving in Smith's time for working people, and he was all for further improvements. So to the extent that American capital was taking advantage of immigrant labor in this completely different way, that Smith would have had a great problem with that, and obviously that's something that was outside his milieu as a Brit. So we can only surmise what he would have said, but I have read nothing from Smith to indicate that he was all for the increase in profit at whatever cost. He was for the wealth of nations, and he said the working people constitute the majority of the citizenry, and if people were willing to work, that they deserved their share of. If national wealth was increasing, they deserve their fair share of that.
So you got the 38 and I'll $50.
Ron, can I call on people?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tim Bolter.
All right. I'd like to know, you know, you've given a number of names of of economists and the definitions of classical economics. I'd like you to get your perspective on the works of John Maynard Keynes and Friedrich Hayek.
Keynes, well, my talk is on classical economics. You could call him on the leading edge of neoclassical. So what I think about him is not to the topic that I talked about and prepared. I can't answer that without my own perspective. I'm a revolutionary.
That's fine. Go ahead, and I'm just curious about your perspective.
So I don't place a lot of value on Keynes's work.
How about Hayek, Friedrich von Hayek?
I'm not too familiar with him.
He was the one who wrote the
Road to Serfdom.
The
Road to Serfdom.
1944.
Oh,
And he
not
was
familiar, sorry.
Austrian School of Economics.
Okay. Next.
I'm not familiar. Sorry.
Gene Harker.
You mentioned the trade gap, and you mentioned that neoliberals say there's no problem. I think I remember Milton Friedman saying that very thing. What the hell? Let them take our dollars, as many as they want. But this has gone on for years and years and years. So is the only change going to be like a lowered standard of living for workers, or will they they're going to be stuck with all these dollars. I don't know what the hell they're worth. What are they going to do? Buy the Mississippi? What?
Yes.
Well, okay, when neoliberals say they see no problem with that, you know, I should have qualified that. They see no problem about that to capital. Okay, they're not concerned with the majority of America. They're not concerned with the 99%, if you will. They're not concerned with us with us working people. They're you know, like I said, neoclassical, neoliberal economics is totally gauged to serve capital and to help capital achieve its maximum return. And so when they see no problem, you have to realize the context of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bill Went.
What do you understand about the Austrian School of Economics, and what do you think of it?
Well, like I was telling Tim here, I haven't gotten into that. I mean, you know, when you take economics, that's my major. You tend to specialize. So I took all the classical economics and I took all the labor economics. And I didn't get into the economics that was about Keynes. I thought maybe I was going to work for a union. And so I took all the labor economics. And I did become a labor economist, but for the U.S. Department of Labor. And that's to answer your question, sir.
Not really.
I worked for the U.S. Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I have a bachelor's in economics.
All right, Dave Singer.
I was surprised at your question and the answer that you gave about what part does labor play in the production. Well,
Yeah, I had a trick in there.
I mean, increasingly world production is being performed by machines, and they're talking about total mechanization.
Thank you.
Well, but obviously somebody has to, you know, take the boxes off put the boxes, take them down, you know, from the whatever, and put them in a truck or something like that. So I didn't quite understand your question.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I did understand the question and the answer as to the role of labor in the productive process.
Are you saying that because you want to change your vote?
No, not at all.
I'm sorry.
I've just, again, they're talking about doing away with labor in many areas of the American economy. I remember when you get a factory job just like that. And I myself worked in a factory, which wasn't much fun, but
Question?
the question is, where do you draw the line between the productive process being performed by labor and that performed by machines?
Well, they say machines are created by people, but you do have where machines are making other machines. You have machine tools making machine tools,
Right.
and so forth.
Is labor
But there's there's physical labor and there's mental labor, and there's perhaps an increasing quantity of the labor content is mental labor. It's people doing computer programming. It's people applying the engineering knowledge to develop automation. But it's still people. There's still people involved.
All right. Charlie?
Yeah, what are your views of the economics being put forth by these would-be Republican candidates for president? And to your knowledge, are any of them not under the control of the Bilderberg group?
Well, I talked, one of my questions was about the understanding that Republicans have when they were referencing Adam Smith, do they really know what Adam Smith actually said? No, I don't think there's a whole lot of depth with economic understanding amongst the Republican Party as a whole, or the current crop of candidates. Having said that, I can't say that there's much more, if even any more, amongst the Democratic candidates or the Democratic Party. Yeah, I know. I just wanted to be fair.
Just call them Republicrats.
Mike Weinert.
And Mr. Moderator, don't answer the questions that I have.
No. You asked if I thought that any of them were up much on economics. No, they are not. Not at all. To the contrary.
Are they controlled by this secret society?
Well, I can't say. They swore me to secrecy about that. No, I'm sorry. That's beyond my purview, Charles. Yeah.
Okay, Mike. Mike Lehman.
Yes. What is your feeling on our global economy with Wall Street? There's rumors that there will be a big short job, and we're going to have another major crash at the change of the presidency again. And what's your feeling on the banks and stock brokerages and the bubble economy and so much wealth stuck there on Wall Street?
Well, there's wealth and there's value. Value is in GDP. GDP is the sum value of useful products and services that are produced. When you talk about Wall Street, when you talk about finance, so-called finance capitalism, okay, are derivatives part of the gross domestic product? No, they are not. Okay, the value of banks providing services such as checking accounts, to people like us, that is included in GDP because that's a service. But a mortgage-backed security, which is a derivative, no, that's not included in GDP and should not be. It's wagering, pure and simple. It's the same as going to Las Vegas. So when you talk about that, I mean, is there anyone here that's not clear about what a derivative is, what that means?
Can you explain it a little bit more?
I can explain it to me. A derivative is something that derives its face value not from actual value. So, for example, an MBS, that's a mortgage-based security, and we read and heard so much about that after the bursting of the bubble. Okay, well, what was a mortgage-based security? How did that work? A lot of people think that a mortgage-based security was that you as a person could buy a piece of a package of mortgages. Like a bank put together 5,000 of their most recent mortgages and you bought a portion of that. No, that's not what that was at all. A mortgage-backed security, let's use the figure 5,000. A mortgage bank putting together conceptually its most recent 5,000 mortgages. Now, the way the security worked is you had to take a position as an investor, as a gambler, basically. Okay, so a typical way this worked was the premise was that after a year, no more than 5% of the mortgages in this conglomeration of mortgages will be in default. So you can take the positive position and you can say, fewer than 5% of these mortgages will be in default. Or you can take the negative position that says 5% or more of these mortgages are going to be in default. It has nothing to do with the actual value. It's just taking a position on a number. And what you had And what was you had banks, and this is all made possible by the repeal of Glass-Steagall. You had banks whose investment divisions were taking the negative position on their own mortgages, on the mortgages that were originated by the mortgage division of that same bank. To hedge, it was a hedge. Okay, so when the original question was about the stock market and so forth, and yeah, that does have an effect on the actual economy, unfortunately. But the way money is increasingly being lost and made, that has nothing to do with any underlying value at all. At least the stock price is somewhat based on the value of a company. A lot of it is psychological. But a derivative is not based on any, that doesn't have any foundation, even on a semi-solid basis.
Yes. Anonymous Peter.
So on GDP, what percentage of our GDP is actually based on value creation rather than just economic activity?
Well, like I said, the derivatives are not included in GDP. So at least they're still being pure on what goes into GDP. It's actual goods and services that have value to the economy as a whole, meaning to the nation, to people, to us Americans, as far as American GDP is concerned.
So let's say I sell you this pen for $1 and you sell me yours for $1. We've added $2 to the GDP?
No, the value of the pen was as it was sold to the wholesaler, and then on a value added basis made available to you on the retail level. You having purchased that pen from the Target and then selling it to me, that doesn't go into GDP. We say the Target plays some part in GDP creation, because what good is a pen to us when it's sitting in a warehouse after it's been produced in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania? It has to be made available to us. So retail, the distribution of the products plays a role in the value of the commodity on a value-added basis.
What about firemen's salaries?
Which? What?
The salaries of a fireman. Is that a part of the GDP show? The value of the service?
Not directly. I mean, it's a subset of it. But no, the value is what you create. Let's say I get $20 an hour, but what I'm producing is a value of I'm producing on an hourly basis products that are worth $40. It's the $40, and when you say salary, that's an allocation that is made from the proceeds of the labor, but it's not a separate, it's not an additional component.
All right, Tim Bolger.
If you were to place an economic value on certain commodities, how would you figure it out and why? Let's specifically take the Cubs team and the Sox team. Would they contribute to GDP? And would you tell us which one is the bigger unit economically?
Yeah, entertainment services do contribute to GDP. As far as my take on what that should be, that's really not the issue. The issue is what the value that the market places on it. So, like for me, I'm not going to pay more than $10 to go to Wrigley Field, okay? But most of the people that go there are paying a lot more than $10, so it doesn't matter what I think about the value. The relevant thing is the market.
But I think the last time they did an analysis, of both teams as a portfolio or a stock per se, the Cubs won hands down.
Yeah. Well, Marx would say it's not the value that the market places; it's the labor content of that. So if a team is winning, you could say that there's more labor content than if a team is losing.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that. I still have some Marxist friends, and I don't want to.
Fred Rizzo.
Dealing with the money right now.
Sure.
How would you relate what you discussed this evening to personal financial decisions? And have you been able to use what you know in your training to make good personal financial decisions, good investment decisions?
Investment? No, I worked for our great nation. I had nothing to invest. Okay, it's like the old army chant. We modified that for civilian. You know how the army chant goes?
No.
You're in the army now. You're in the army now. You'll never get rich, you son of a bitch. You're in the army now.
There you go.
And it's the same with working for a civilian in government. But I had a decent career, and I can't. The taxpayer been good to me, very good to me. I can't complain. But no, the revolving door exists for a reason, and it was a different thing under Kennedy. JFK, he wanted people who had done their careers, after they retire from a big financial career, to devote some of their lives to public service. Now you have people that are going in, and they're going into the federal government. They're creating these. They're networking.
Golden parachute.
Yeah. Well, no, not golden parachute, but they're networking, and then they go back to the private sector, and they exploit these contacts that they made in the business, that they've been hired into a business as like a federal contractor that works with the agency that they used to work for. And so that's like JFK's idea being turned on its head. That's something that Karl Marx used to say. He always liked to not only say that people were wrong, but people...
I see you, Don.
Okay.
Let's get one more.
Yeah, I have a question.
Uh-oh.
You've had a question.
No,
You've had a question.
I haven't had a question.
You've had a couple of questions.
I never got to ask
He
a
hasn't
question.
had one yet.
No. Hey, was Ricardo influenced by Malthus?
Well, they influenced each other. They were actually colleagues. They talked to each other. I relate to Malthus. The Malthus-Ricardo relationship to me is like, you ever see the movie Amadeus? With Salieri and Mozart?
Yeah.
Okay. Malthus was Salieri, and Ricardo was
the Mozart?
Was Mozart. Yeah. Ricardo was the star, and Malthus was, also ran.
Oh.
Yeah.
But okay.
Salieri wasn't that bad.
No, so I thought Salieri was good. I thought Mozart had too many notes. I did. I agree with that. I don't need all of them.
Okay, we got one more question.
All right, Bob.
You said you went into economics to best understand people, so I was wondering if you
No, it's
found
society, not people.
Oh, well.
I guess the amalgam of
people make up society.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was wondering if you found out whether you believe with Marx, or maybe believe in economic determinism, that especially in capitalism, people do everything for money. And you see Marx that way, and a lot of interpreters still, as a determinist, thinking money causes everything in capitalism.
Yes. Well, that's connected with neoliberalism, neoclassicism. The idea of economic determinism is predicated on us not being human beings, but being robots. By reacting in a certain way and not having free will or choice. And no, it's messier than that. Marx often wanted to make things very clear-cut, and he wanted to give the impression that this capitalistic society, he was full of contradictions. He said it was progressive, but other times he wanted people to think it was evil and bad, and you had to get rid of it right away. And that it was controlling every aspect of our lives. I mean, he was not only an economist, but he was a revolutionary, and he wanted to influence people's thinking. So, no, this economic determinism is, I should say, you can include it in his economics, and if you do include it in his economics, it degrades the level of his economic work.
All right, I do have this one question. How is it that you call economics a science, a social science, when everybody knows that if you lay all the economists end to end, they could never come to a conclusion?
Okay. Well, yeah. Wow. I mean, I have to answer that question on more than one level, and there is a thing. Neoclassicism is its foundation on the numbers and modeling and quantifying everything is partly a reaction to that, but it takes you away from just the basic laws and regulations of economics. And am I contradicting myself there? Yeah, to some extent, yeah. But as far as the science, okay, you know, I went to school 3.5 years. I did 121 credit hours, and I want to think it's a science, okay? So let me think it's a science. It's not really, but no, it's, I mean, there's a fine line between it being an art and being a science. But no, so I think social science is a good in-between thing, yeah.
It's trying to make knowledge out of what facts and figures we can find. Okay.
Well, to some extent.
All
But,
right, let's thank our guy.
All right.
oh, thank you. Just to you.
Thank you. All right, Brom, we have about, it's now 7:55.
All right. How many people have remarks to make? I'm sure Don has, and David, and Bill Wendt, and Margaret Goldstein. Goodness, all right.
We'll go to 5 minutes each, I think, Brom. What do you think?
Sounds good to me. If you can't do it in 5 minutes.
All right.
What have you got to say that makes any sense?
Plenty.
Yeah, 20 minutes each.
All right.
Better than you, Charlie?
Okay. All right, when you're
I
ready.
think what this conversation needs is a little more understanding of the Austrian School of Economics. I'd like to recommend some books to read. Now, I think what makes a fine first course in economics and an even better umpteenth course in economics is Harriet Brown, How You Can Profit from the Coming to Evaluation, which I read about when it came out in 1971. And actually, one word later, well, it answered the problems I had with the economics I had gotten in college about 6 years earlier. You have to have water to keep everybody, water production to keep everybody working, and you have to have either inflation or unemployment. And among other things, Brown, B-R-O-N-E, elucidated a theory of economic evolution which explained this to me. I mean, I couldn't figure it out. Another good book, introductory book, is Percy Greaves, Understanding the Dollar Crisis, which gives a more academic approach to the Austrian school. And among other things, there's a structure of production. Let's say you got 4 groups of workers making can openers. The first one mines the raw materials. The second one makes the raw materials, or the blast furnace. The third one manufactures the can openers, and the fourth group sells it. Then what you have to have at each stage of production, you have to have a certain amount of working capital to
keep the process going. You don't get returns on capital until the product is sold. And I think when you combine that with the Austrian business cycle theory, and the book you read on that is Warren Rothbard, America's Great Depression. When you artificially lower interest rates through bank credit expansion, you artificially increase the consumption of raw materials. And I think that's a pretty important consideration when it comes to conserving resources. Oh, I can leave it at that.
Thank you, Bill.
You're not going to rebuttal me?
Thanks for your talk. I enjoyed it. I want to just bring up one disagreement I have with your classical economists, especially Marx, who say that the source of profit and value is labor and only labor. I disagree with that. I think that the source of profit and value is collaboration, a partnership between labor, capitalists, inventors, people with ideas, managers. It's an enterprise. When I was reading Capital a long time ago, and I was paying close attention to his calculation of where value comes from, I found it faulty and actually ultimately nonsensical. And I went to look at some of these quote-unquote Austrians. This one guy, especially Ludwig von Mises, I think that's his first name, Ludwig von Mises or whatever. Now, he might be a right-winger politically, I don't know. But I think he had a more realistic idea about what value is about. And ultimately, it's subjective. It's arbitrary. And one way that you can see that is when Marx was talking about somebody was questioning him, or he was discussing diamonds, digging up diamonds, for instance, okay? And he was trying to somehow or other rationalize the value of diamonds, okay? And that's purely arbitrary, gems. It doesn't cost a worker anymore to dig up gems than to dig up coal, okay? But one is a lot more, has a whole lot more value on the market, and why is that? It's purely arbitrary. Some people, decide that they're going to pay a hell of a lot more money for diamonds than quartz. Okay, so there's a lot in economics in general that I think is complex. It's a matter of judgment. It's arbitrary, and that's one reason that I find socialism, in particular, some of the fundamentals of socialism doctrinaire. And so socialists want to tell, society that this is how it has to be with regard to money, with regard to capitalism in general, with regard to a lot of economic basics. And I disagree with that approach. I think that people, all of us together, workers and everybody, capitalists as well, should be included in this dialogue and determination.
They're going to let workers decide?
I didn't hear it.
They're going to let workers decide?
Hey, one pool at
a time, Charlie.
That's okay. Everybody together, democratically, should decide what to do about the economy and everything else, for that matter, in society.
CEO, right?
Let me see.
It's going to ask the employees of McDonald's.
That's, I think, basically what I had to say. Thanks.
Okay.
CEOs who call all employees, right?
Those of you who are regulars of the college before know me.
Yes.
And you all assume I'm a total asshole. I don't care. But I probably had about as many economics courses apparently over the last 40 years around the world at times as our speaker did. And you hate my economics, which proves that most economics is trash. Because in some cases I've probably been taught by some of the same professors. And I definitely read the same books. Well, what we go through now is, you've got to remember two things about Marx and economics and that. And we tried it in the Soviet Union. You might notice something. They aren't there anymore. It didn't work. So, take that to heart. The perfect communist system from Marx and Engels, they tried. And the main motto in the Soviet Union for the laborers was, the government intends to pay us and we pretend to work. They don't exist anymore. We're still here. We're still viable. We ain't doing that great, but we're here. And as for the livable minimum wage, Charlie, and a few others, you want somebody who goes out there and flips the burger or stands in the window and says, you want price with that paying $15 an hour, then I work as an armed security guard. I'm supposed to protect you. I want 20. Otherwise, why should I protect you? Think about it. If you want the protection, you should pay for it. Nobody's offering me $20 an hour at the moment. And the guy behind the counter who says you want price with that ain't worth 15. What?
How much is it worth?
I don't actually know, but it ain't $15 an hour.
How much is the CEO worth?
How the hell do I know? Does the company make money or not for his stockholders?
Then how do you know the burger flipper isn't worth 15?
And why isn't he making it running the goddamn place? If he's worth that money and he's that damn good, he should be the manager. Think about it. If all you could do is stand there and say, if you want fries with that, you are not overly productive. If you can progress
I'm very productive, and that's good.
through the ranks, and you deserve everything you get.
Yeah, how do you want it?
Otherwise, you can stand there and get everything you're going to get. You're probably not going to like it. Minimum wage jobs were designed to teach you what to do so you could improve yourself and go on to more productive labor. They weren't an end to themselves saying, I got a minimum wage for myself and quite possibly the 3 illegitimate children I got to pay child support for. You were supposed to learn what you were doing so you could advance. If you want fries with that is the whole end of your life, then a minimum wage is where you should probably sit. And $15 an hour is not it. When you trust your life, in a lot of cases, and you do, to an armed security guard who has $15 an hour and you think he's supposed to protect you, why should he? Why should he do it when the jackass at McDonald's is making more money? Think about it. You bitch about the cops. Chicago cops are very well paid. Well, in the suburbs and other areas around the country, they're not nearly as well paid. But you expect the same diligence, education, and dedication to save your life. But you refuse to admit.
Okay, time.
No, don't give me time. I'm about done anyway, but I'm finishing it.
It's 5 minutes each, so you're out of time.
Well, if I'm out of time, it only proves that you're a total asshole.
Well, then I guess 5 minutes doesn't mean the same to you as it does others.
No, it probably doesn't. If you really want to know why, I'll tell you later.
All right. Neil rest.
Yeah, the herd of elephants in the room. Economics deals with human activity.
if you deal with human activity and you never mention human psychology, your head is somewhere in the vicinity of your small intestine. You're talking about things people do. Political economy. I don't recall the Greek details exactly, but economy comes from the root word for household, which is also the root word of ecology. And political is about power, which is about human activity and human psychology. Marx at least addressed it. I'm not going to go. Marx is a swamp you very carefully skirt, but Marx did deal with the fact that we're talking about human behavior, not about some kind of robots or theoretical beings or equations. It's about people, and it's about power. And that's where most of the classical economics falls down, because people aren't making deals, people are being powerful, and they're stepping on other people just as totally as they can. When it's a company town, and you say, oh gee, Mr. Vanderbilt or Mr. Carnegie, I think I'm worth, yeah, well, that's when you get shot by the guards. And most of the people here know a lot of that history. I don't need to itemize. We're talking about people, and we're talking about human desires. We're not just talking about production and distribution of goods and services.
Okay.
All right.
Don
All
Ritchie.
right. Okay, I just wanted to say that, well, first of all, I want to say this is one of the best presentations I've ever seen at the College of Complexes, and you did it without PowerPoint, and you did it without any YouTube videos.
I bored everyone with just my voice.
Yeah, and so this was really great. I mentioned last week we had for those of you that weren't here, a regular here at the College of Complexes spoke about Thomas Malthus, and when our speaker was talking about Ricardo and his idea that a rising population would result in more poverty because there'd be more people than could be provided for, I was reminded of what Corina said about Malthus last Saturday. When our speaker was talking about this idea, Rousseau's idea of the social contract of two guys meeting and negotiating for one guy giving the other guy a job, real employment in the real world almost never works that way. Normal people, because that kind of relationship where there's negotiation for being hired or buying a product can only occur, I think, it only occurs between equals. That there can only be negotiation between equals. When one party is superior to the other, the superior party will dictate terms, and the inferior party is left with either two choices: take it or leave it. And so now, before I yield the microphone to Margaret, I would just also like to say that I don't think it's a good idea to insult restaurant workers when you're talking into a microphone in a restaurant, because apart from the ethical concerns, the fact that you're making a personal attack on people who are actually present in the room, there's also it's just something you shouldn't do if you don't want the restaurant workers to spit into your coffee.
I voted to Mike tonight.
I'll remember. Margaret Goldstein.
Michael, you're seeing that Adam Smith says countries should produce what they make, what makes sense for them to produce there. In other words, goods can be made more efficiently, say, in China than the U.S. and so forth. And this is the rationale, always has been, for having free trade and free trade agreements. So why are you blaming free trade for the lessening of the U.S. middle class. First of all, free trade has made possible a middle class in other countries. Do we have a monopoly on having a middle class? It matters that China and India and these other countries get a chance to raise their standard of living too. And the other point I want to make is you're claiming, and I guess to a certain extent it's true, jobs have been lost to free trade, but many more have been lost to automation. And all you have to do is look at Jewel or a bank, you see the tellers gone, you see the cashiers gone. Come on. And they're doing it left and right, and there's no stop to the loss of jobs in this country to automation.
Oh. Butler? Oh,
Yeah, you're first.
After Dave. Dave's up.
The arguments against automation have been going on since I was a boy, when elevator operators suddenly disappeared and elevators suddenly became electronically operated. Second, I will speak briefly about that excellent program, The Mine Wars, that ran on public television on the American Experience last week. We spoke of the social contract, and I agree that that's only possible when it's between equals. The mine owners and the miners were not equal, and as I'm sure most of you know, they lived in company towns, they were paid horribly, and in scrip, which was redeemable at an inflated price at the company store, so that the mine owners could offset any losses that they incurred in coal sales by the prices at the store. And if, God forbid, some miner protested this condition, well, he usually wound up losing his job, being booted out of his house in the company town. He was lucky if he wasn't beaten up by the private thief security guards, the mine police, and being blacklisted so he couldn't find a job anywhere else. And finally, this provoked a wave of violence in West Virginia, and we had practically the biggest armed insurrection since the Civil War in I believe it was 1920. And the miners were stopped from marching through a very anti-union county called, I believe, Logan County in West Virginia, only with great difficulty. And because the fate that awaited them was to be massacred by an notoriously corrupt and anti-union sheriff. And this broke the power of the United Mine Workers in West Virginia for a long time to come, until the 1930s, when Congress and President Roosevelt made it possible for the workers to organize. Finally, on an entirely different subject, I'm even less familiar with the Austrian School of Economics than our speaker. And so possibly I shouldn't make this joke, but I'm going to anyway. When I was a boy, there was a cartoon character, a cat named Mr. Jinx, who some of you will remember.
Mike?
And it was chasing these two little mice, Pixie and Dixie, and saying, "I hate Mises to pieces."
Oh, Mises pieces.
Well, yeah, I hate Mises to pieces. Thank you.
Just as a matter of note, previous speaker pointed out that the Chicago Police Department is very well paid, but that the suburban police departments receive, in many cases, a pittance. You know why? Very simple. The Chicago Police Department and the Chicago Fire Department both have very, very good, effective unions.
Yeah. Right.
The suburban police departments do not.
No, they don't.
Now, you know, I know that there is this conceit going around that we are in a post-union age where we don't need to do that anymore because we are all professionals and our superiors will of course treat us with the kind of respect we deserve and give us exactly what we are worth. Now, if you believe that, I would like to know what you're smoking, because there are times when, let's face it, Guinness doesn't always cut it. And you know, you need to realize that I'm not an economist. As a matter of fact, I think a large number of them are what you call sprethiopractic.
What?
Yes. It comes from a combination of Greek and Latin words, meaning they have their head and neck up their posterior. Okay? Check it out. Check out the etymology. You'll see it breaks down perfectly. But if you say that a person is sprethiopractic, I guarantee you're probably not going to get slugged, because the guy will not understand what you're saying. If he did understand what you're saying, you're probably a dead man. Tonight, our speaker's presentation was interesting, but I was a little disappointed, although I'll admit that I came to class late, for which I apologize. However, I was not so much interested in hearing that the middle income group in America is gradually, and in some cases not so gradually, disappearing. And I do not have to hear again how America's balance of trade has been going down the toilet for the past umpteen years. What I had kind of hoped to hear tonight was, how do we reverse the trend? How do we once again restore the American working people to a middle income, fairly stable lifestyle that our parents and our grandparents in some cases enjoyed?
And why did you come here?
I came here to learn something. And one of the things that I came here to learn about and learned tonight was that there are certain answers we are not getting either from our politicians or apparently from our economists. We need to know, first off, we know that we've got these troubles. We need to know, what do we do about them? When you go to the doctor and he says, you've got this, this, and this, what's the first thing you say to the doctor? Or at least the first thing I say to the doctor, okay, doc, what do we do to straighten it out? What do we do to correct it? How do we get it done? Those of you who know me for a while have known that I am a very bottom line type of person. I'm not so much concerned with the theory of it as much as I am concerned with how do we get it fixed. I don't care how particularly. I don't care whether some philosopher 300 years ago would have disagreed. I want to know what works today. One of the things that I've always been fascinated about was the attitude of Franklin Roosevelt, and to a lesser degree Teddy Roosevelt. When faced with these kinds of problems, they didn't stare at their navels. They asked themselves, what do we do to fix it? How do we fix it? Let's get it done. And they got it done. As a result of which this country had, in the post-World War II period, until about maybe 20 years ago, the most dynamic economy in the history of the world. We can have that again if we get back to the idea of, we've got a problem. We're economically ill. Our system is falling apart. Do we run off in the corner and cry? Do we talk about how we are all guilty of all of this? No, no. We sit down and we find out what needs to be done. The labor movement is also in regression. Why? Why at a time when the average American worker is being screwed over more vigorously than he was at any time since the days of the robber barons? I mean, at least Andrew Carnegie, who screwed over his workers, at least he left a string of libraries so that the workers' children could learn enough. Oh, I've just been given time, and I know that there are some judges who would like to have given me time. But,
Okay, next.
Sutton.
Okay.
Just some miscellaneous comments here. Adam Smith is known for mercantilism, which is the raw resources go to England, the finished goods go out, and that is the best thing that England can do. Also, you don't need a preset method of allocating goods and resources, that it happens automatically in a society. That you leave people alone and they're able to adjust to the reality and produce goods and distribute goods to the maximum possible. Would you shut up?
Thank you.
Now, Ricardo is known for such things as supply and demand. That he looked at society and came up with some rational things that should be analyzed, and he did that mathematically, and he's known for that. So that's Ricardo's contribution. Karl Marx was living at a time of great exploitation of everybody, and the gentleman asked, what can be done about it? His view was that you needed a forcible revolution, and the working man could be put in a position of dominance. Russia tried that for 2 years after the revolution, called the New Economic Policy, and it never worked. You go to Russia, it's not that well done. So it's more on the basis of a capitalism below the upper levels, and that the government and the various bureaucracies are the ones that set the priorities and allocate the capital goods. And that doesn't work so well either.
I'm not leaving yet.
The thing that I would like to emphasize here is that in order to correct things, you have to look at the world and competitive advantage. What can be done the best in a given country? You look at China. China has a cheap labor pool, and that is our competitive advantage. The way you get around that is to educate the worker. General Motors went out of business because of the crappy goods that they produced, okay? You need people that are educated and skilled, and that's the way around it, because you cannot have a high school education and go out into the workforce and make a middle class income to support your family. You can't do that anymore. It's a new world. And mollifying those idiots that indicate that all they have to do is watch football and everything will be okay, you can't do that anymore. It's a new world, and the politicians don't have the guts to tell the people that. What is the justification for a $15 minimum wage? The gentleman is going around in a fog to try to analyze it. You need $15 an hour in order to support a family. And that's the basis on which you can give that. And you're living in a new world now, and you're not alert to it, and it's time to wake up.
Okay. All right. Charlie, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Yeah, did you hear him?
5 minutes,
Did you hear
Charlie.
him, Joe? He said it's time to wake up. Wake up, Bill. All right, let's thank our speaker. That was very good. Apparently, well, the guys and gals kind of liked what you had to say here, and you did put some time and effort in the presentation that we appreciate. And please come again if you want to refine your topic or narrow it in some regard. It seems to be some interest here. I really don't have any depth in the topic of economics other than the economics of the working men and women of the United States. And there's only one figure we need, and that's the difference between the union and non-union. If you're a union employee, you are going to earn 1/3 more in wages and benefits than your non-union counterpart. And that's all you need to know. Now, in addition to that 1/3, we're talking about, is economics determinative? You got, not only do you get 1/3 more wages, if you work for a real mean guy, who kind of like is unfair, you can call up a guy like me, and I'll come over and I'll talk to him and say, hey, you ought to be nice, you know? Right, you know? But no, you are entitled to due process, and that jerk cannot fire you unless you're entitled to due process and an appeal. That's one of the things you don't calculate that really is important. I don't know if you can put a dollar value on that. What is the dollar value of job security? Yeah, I don't know if you can get around to that. Now, I heard Joe here talking. Oh no, wait a minute. You're talking. You saw with some sort of community where you talk to these CEOs. You don't need communism. The CEO and the boys are just gonna have some community of interest, right, Ted? You know, Carly Fiora, that goofy woman. I just looked it up. I came across it. Now here I gave a lecture on the children making those products, Hewlett Packard products, in China, and committing suicide in factories they're imprisoned in. And I saw that her net worth of the company she walked away from, got fired from, she's got $60 million. Do you think that person, how do you think they got that $60 million bucks? You think she got and played the lottery?
Because American people.
Yeah, then you, pal, you're next. And you're talking about, oh, socialism doesn't work. We are get off it. Well, yeah. What happened in 2008? Was that some great capitalism celebration? People losing their homes? Everybody on the street? The guy told you 10 minutes ago that there's no more middle class in the United States. And this guy gets up there and says, oh, isn't capitalism good? It's working for all of you. That's why we're all getting poorer and poorer every day of the week. Come on. What is going on here? Don't you listen? Now I know this, Joe went, he met the owner of the bank, and they got together. The guy said, where are you headed? He goes, oh, I'm going to the bank. The guy said, well, I'm the bank president. He says, yeah, I'm going to get a job as a bank guard. And the guy said, and Joe says, I want $20 an hour. And the bank president said, you're nuts. Now, how long does it take to learn how to use a gun? You point it and you pull the trigger. And he wants 20 bucks an hour. Now what wealth does that guard produce for the bank? Nothing. What does the person flipping burger does? They make burgers that they sell for $1 or $2. But you somehow, you got it in your mind that you're worth more than the burger flipper. Guess what, pal? You're not. Get out of here. Thank you very much.
Call it up and wait.
Yeah, oh, I don't use this gun.
You can be no more wrong than anything else in the world, because free market capitalism has been one of the best things that has saved the world. As I've said before, 300 years ago, everybody lived in abject poverty, including your lords and leaders of the land who had a standard of living at that time, much like our homeless people today do. They had servants, yes, but you know, I look at today, I look at our world and I see of the incredible industrialization that's happened, of the betterment of lives through trade and goods and markets and everything else. And I see globalization as a force for good. And as far as our economics doldrums in the United States are concerned, take a look at the simple statistics. We are still the most powerful economy in the world. We are bigger than the next 13 economies in the world. We have access to the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And we virtually, by the might of our military, export security to all the sea lanes of the world. A ship can't float without the implicit consent of the United States Navy, and that's political power. What we need to do as a nation is to keep the sea lanes open and the goods a-flowing. We need to keep this capitalistic revolution going so that everybody can join the middle class. What happened during the middle 2000s when we were so preoccupied with our security complex is that another 2/3 of the world joined the middle class, namely in China and India. And right now we may have had a small economic slowdown based largely upon fraudulent loans and a large corrupting influence of the credit markets. It was not free market capitalism that did it. It was the fraud perpetrated and let go by that system or by the acceptance of those lies. Now, we're back into getting somewhat more into normal times. But as trade increases and prices come down and people can buy and sell goods, we benefit. The problem is a lot of the poor in the poorer, undeveloped countries don't have access to the capital markets. They can't register a business, they can't buy a car, they can't legally hold property without a lot of bureaucratic nonsense. That's why they may be able to open a restaurant, but the thing is, you can hear you own it. You have a certificate. And I'll be more than happy to explain all that later. Bottom line is, capitalism does work. It has its ups and its downs. It's there. Now, Charlie, more people today are making better wages than ever. Now, I'm not saying that there's not exploitation, but there are people making it in America.
Making shirts, right?
Right on.
In Bangladesh.
Huh?
Good job.
Now, a word from Ha-Joon Chung. Now, Ha-Joon Chung is writing in Britain, but he's an American of Chinese ancestry, and he's writing about capitalism, not the capitalism of, but he's writing about the myths of capitalism, like the free market. What a myth. There is nothing really free about the labor market. Who is in the labor market? Well, you can't have a stable society and without restricting the number of people who can work and be paid for it. So we have wages only appropriated from people who are of a certain age. If you're a kid, you're not supposed to work. Now, are kids working in America? Yes. And they are illegally paid by assisting their parents in the fields and picking tomatoes or other fruits. And then there are the immigrants who get next to nothing because they are not here legally. And then there are people who are kept out. They want to be here, they want to make a living at American wage rates, but they are, we have presidential candidates who are going to force the Mexicans to build a wall to keep them out. And everybody says, oh yes, we have to keep out those people. Those people. Anybody who ain't like us. Of course, we also have the what is it, B1, HB1 workers, those who are imported as guest arbeiter. They are attached to some firm, and if they raised any questions about the terms and conditions of their employment, they would be out on their ear and without a not only not without a job, but without a country. I have to go swim home. Well, there are all sorts of limitations on what freedoms you have in a market. And in a capitalist-run society, that's people who are investment capitalists, the terms and conditions are made for stability of their markets and for their continued control of the society. And that's laid out here in this book, a recent book, 23 things they don't tell you about capitalism. Aju Chop. You can get it at the library on the waiting list. And he goes into quite a bit more than the myths of the market.
Me again?
I guess you're on.
Okay. Sure. I'd like to hear some more rebuttals.
No, they were all good.
I don't know what to think for once Charles didn't make sport of me.
Oh dear.
It feels like the first time in forever. Okay. The diamonds versus coal thing is a very important part of Marx's Capital. And what he was saying is, since diamonds are rarer than coal, I mean, I think that's part of it. To me, I'm not an expert in, I'm not a geologist, but I think that coal is a lot more plentiful than diamonds, and as such, it takes more labor to get those diamonds out, more exploration and more digging, and you're doing a lot of digging and just getting a few diamonds out as opposed to striking a big rich coal seam. And that was his point, is the labor content. And he did qualify it to say that the labor content determined the value, and the relative value between commodities can fluctuate. But he said in the long run, as far as the price, the retail price, the wholesale price, but in the long run, the price does reflect the value regardless of the short-term fluctuations, and that the labor content, meaning the true value, was really the foundation, was the magnet that the price fluctuations were centered around. I don't want anyone here to think that I'm defending everything that Marx said. I included him because my presentation was about classical economics. And I defined, to me, I consider that, like I say, there's three biggies in classical economics, and Marx is one of them. He was a great writer, a great thinker. He wasn't any less of a thinker or a writer on economics. Didn't have any worse understanding of it than either Smith or Ricardo, so I include him. Let's see, a burger flipper versus Carly Fiorina. Okay, a burger flipper is undoubtedly producing value. Carly Fiorina gets paid $60 million to run Hewlett-Packard into the ground. Okay, how is that producing value? the social contract, the time advantage was something that Marx indicated. I cut that out because of time considerations. But one way he shredded the idea of the social contract about the prospective employee bumping into his prospective employer in bargaining this thing is that the prospective employer has a time advantage. He's got a pool of money, of capital. He can sit back and wait for that prospective employee to find it difficult to put food on the table if he has a family, especially. There's pressures. So the pressure is on that guy to just, okay, and he's not going to bump into his future employer, obviously. They're going to come from different neighborhoods and everything. That prospective new employee is going to go to the employment office, and he's going to say 40 francs a week. And I'm worth, no, if you don't want the 40 francs, you can go home and come back when you're ready to take your 40 francs. It's, that's part of Marx's phraseology in shredding the social contract, the time advantage. The employer, the capitalist, has all the time in the world for that guy to realize he's got to take whatever they're offering. On the free trade, I was saying what Adam Smith said. So like silk made in China, are you going to make silk in Vermont? Just so you can say you make it in the United States? No, if it makes sense to buy it from China, obviously it makes sense. I'm not up on silk manufacturing. I'm not even sure you can't make silk in Vermont. But if they have, he was saying if they have a knack for it in a certain area and they got the resources and so forth, just do it there and import it. But there's no reason that the productive capacity of a nation like America, who had the best electronic industry, the best clothing industry, the best textile industry, why that should be dismantled and reassembled over there overseas. About the company store, that reminded me when I was with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I went to a mining company in Florida, a phosphate mine operation, and they had a company store there, and they had company script, and the personnel manager gave me some cardboard coins that you could only redeem in the company store. This is in Central Florida. It was a big phosphate mine. Phosphate is used in fertilizers, and that company was still in operation, at least in the 80s. And they weren't operating on the same basis with the company store, but she had some old pieces, some old cardboard coins. My prescription for what should be done, there's 2 other talks that I give, and my prescription is part of one of those other 2 talks, which I've given. And I think I remember you, sir, rebutting my prescription, but that's a whole nother talk. Here I just wanted to talk about the classical economists and the state of economics today, and the difference between classical economics and mainstream economics. On the union versus non-union, it's funny well, it's not really that funny. It's disturbing, but the attack on wages has it really got its start through collective bargaining in the transportation industry, especially in air travel, the airlines, United Airlines. Wage levels were reduced through collective bargaining. So, and that was done in the auto industry with the 2-tier wages. So wages and benefits can be attacked and lowered through collective bargaining just as easily as they used to be able to raise them, and that's the thing. And about specializing, there were people I went to school with that paid attention to the Austrians. I had a colleague that specialized in the labor standards in Yugoslavia under Tito. So you can specialize. Some people specialized in monetarism, but you can't cover all the bases. So I specialize in what I did. You have to know the basic things about market and So I did that in addition to things. I sure appreciate you all coming here. I appreciate the cogent questions and the rebuttals. I know it's a topic of interest. I went into it, and if you all have enjoyed this evening half as much as I've enjoyed giving the presentation, then I guess I've enjoyed it twice as much as you have. But I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I had
class dismissed.
if someone asked me who said that.